Is absence of evidence evidence of absence? Sometimes. You see there's a lot of people saying that it is, some people saying that it's not, and the truth is sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. The big problem here is that there are distinctions to be made, and they are very rarely made. There's one distinction that I gotta get out of the way right from the start. This discussion is at its core a logical one, and that is to say that we are trying to ascertain the truth of what is the case and what is not the case, what's true and what's false. Existence, which in this case is typically the existence of a deity, is not a special case. We're still trying to ascertain the truth of whether or not that deity exists or does not. Is the existence of that God true or false? So, when we're talking about the absence of evidence, or this perceived absence of evidence for that God's existence, can we cite that lack of evidence in support of a claim, in support of any claim? Can we ever say that the fact that we don't have evidence actually supports a conclusion? Sometimes we can. And there's a right way to do this and a wrong way. Let's look at the right way to do this. Here I'm going to take a sample claim. And here it is. In my left hand, there is a dollar bill. Now, initially, you're going to very quickly conclude that that's false. There's definitely no dollar bill in my left hand. But let's analyze this. Let's explore the issue. How do you know that there's no dollar bill in my left hand? And your answer would probably be, well, I don't see it. And that's the important part. You're saying that there is a link between the dollar bill in my hand, or the dollar bill that I'm claiming is in my hand, and your perception, or lack thereof, of the dollar bill. You're saying there's a connection between the two. So, if we could analyze this logically, we get an argument that is known as modus tollens, and it goes like this. If there is a dollar bill in my hand, then we would know that there is a dollar bill in my hand, or we would have evidence that the dollar bill is in my hand. There is no evidence that the dollar bill is in my hand, therefore it's not there. And that's fine. That's a perfectly valid argument, and it's even sound. We can justify the connection between the dollar bill in my hand and our perception of it, and our lack of perception of it. We can support the truth of those premises. But let's take another claim, and this is where the absence of evidence argument fails. And here's my second claim. There is a dollar bill in my desk drawer right now. Now, your initial reaction is going to be, I have absolutely no idea whether or not there is a dollar bill in your desk drawer. But for the sake of argument, let's explore that same thought process that we used previously. And you would say, and in this case you would say, no, there is no dollar bill in your desk drawer. And I would say, why? And you're going to support that claim, or you can support that claim, using the same reasoning that you did the first time. And say, well, I don't see it. But there's a problem there. Can we justify that connection? Because you could see my hand very clearly last time. You can't see my desk drawer. You can't see the contents of it. So you can't justify that connection. So when we try to use that same argument, it fails on the first premise. And that is, if there is a dollar in my desk drawer, then we would have evidence for the dollar in my desk drawer. Now, you do lack the evidence for the dollar in my desk drawer, but it falls apart because you can't justify that connection. You cannot justify the existence of the dollar in my desk drawer and your perception of it, or the lack thereof. This is the very important premise that you need to support a lack of evidence, or to use a lack of evidence to support an argument. From this, we can conclude that a lack of justification for a claim can sometimes suffice as grounds upon which we reject the claim. A lack of justification can give us reason to reject the claim. And it works like this. You cannot cite absence of evidence in the rejection of a claim without first establishing that the truth of the claim would necessitate our knowledge of the evidence that we indeed lack. My initial problem with the claim that absence of evidence is evidence of absence was that evidence is essentially a perspective-based thing, and that what knowledge I have can be evidence, but if you lack that knowledge, then it's not evidence from your point of view. So we're citing the existence of evidence, but then since I can sometimes have it and you not, it's necessarily subjective existence, whatever that would be, and we have problems there. I'm not going to go into all that, though. I think there's actually a much bigger problem here, and that is that the overarching issue is that there is a failure to acknowledge that X is true is just as valid a claim as X is false. That is to say, that neither of those two is a default stance in and of itself, and that belief in either side requires justification. Now, if you say that a lack of evidence in and of itself leads you to reject one and accept the other, what you're essentially saying is that the following two are equivalent statements. There is no evidence that X is true. And that's the same as there is evidence that X is not true. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized that this leads you to some really absurd conclusions. So we're actually going to go with this line of reasoning and show where it naturally leads us, but strap yourselves in, it's a bumpy ride. Take this thought experiment. Imagine that it's election season and there is a referendum on the ballot for Proposition 49. Now, Proposition 49 is one with which you are somewhat familiar. You comprehend the idea, but you have absolutely no idea whether or not it's true or false. So, you decide to attend a debate later in the evening. One person will be in favor of Proposition 49. That is to say, they will be arguing in favor of the position that X is true. They will be faced off with a person rejecting Proposition 49. In other words, they will be promoting the position that Proposition 49 is false. So you go there, both of the individuals go up on stage, they shake each other's hands, and then they walk off stage. The debate is over, and not a word has been said. So what we have here is a lack of evidence on both sides. So, using the thought process that is being promoted by Dhorpatan, let's see where this leads us. Well, what about the claim that Proposition 49 is true? Well, what is our evidence that Prop 49 is true? Well, we don't have any. So we must then conclude, by Dhorpatan's logic, that Proposition 49 is not true. But what about the claim that Prop 49 is false? What evidence do we have of that? Well, we don't have any. So we have to conclude that it's not false. So we have concluded that it's not true and it's not false. But wait a minute. Do we actually have evidence that Prop 49 is true? Well, if it's not false, then it must be true. So we actually do have evidence that Prop 49 is true. But wait, what about Prop 49 is false? We've previously concluded that Prop 49 is not true, so it must be false. So, we have simultaneously concluded that we do and do not have evidence that Prop 49 is simultaneously true and false. Congratulations, Dhorpatan. You have achieved exponential absurdity.